We're continuing our study on spiritual atmospheres, and to do so we have been looking at the life of Saul, the first king of Israel. 1 Samuel 10 verse 6 says, "The Spirit of the Lord will come upon you, and you will prophesy with him, and you'll be turned into another man." And that's kind of what encapsulates this teaching. The Spirit of the Lord will come upon you, and you'll be turned into another man. And we've discussed that in previous lessons, but so we're going to pick up in verse 15. As a backstory, Saul was looking for donkeys, and yet Samuel was going to anoint him as the next king of Israel. Well, now Saul meets back up with his uncle, and we'll pick up in verse 15. It says, "And Saul's uncle said, 'Tell me, please, what Samuel said to you.' So Saul said to his uncles, 'He told us plainly that the donkeys have been found, but about the matters of the kingdom he didn't tell what Samuel had said.'" A few things I want to look at concerning this account in the Bible. First of all, Saul could have potentially missed his divine appointment fooling around with these donkeys. He was so engrossed in these donkeys that he could have potentially missed a divine appointment, and that even led to his divine destiny. And, we could look at that several ways. Donkeys could be the circumstance, because that was what he was looking at, and that was the natural circumstances around him. Or we could look at it from the standpoint of stubborn people. Donkeys would certainly represent stubborn people that we have to deal with. And you have to watch both circumstances and stubborn people, that they don't distract you from where you need to be. People have all kinds of agendas, and I've noticed this, it's almost supernatural. People that have no honor for the Word of God, they will call you when you're in the Word. They will call you when you're in prayer. If they don't honor the things of God supernaturally, and I'm not even saying they're trying, they will disrupt you whenever you're in prayer or you're in the Word of God. And you got to watch this tendency to every time the phone rings, you think you have to answer it. Every time somebody calls you, you think you have to do it. Pastors especially have to watch this. They get the idea that every time somebody hollers, they got to jump. Well, if it's an emergency, truly an emergency, but some people, everything's an emergency. So you have to guard this time. You have to guard your time in the presence of God, because that's where the transformation occurs. Jesus said, "You freely received, you can freely give." You can't give what you don't have yourself. So we have to guard that time from peripheral issues and things. I heard Brother Keith Moore tell a testimony where a guy called him up and said, "Oh, I need you right now," in a fizz. And the Spirit of God says, "No, just wait here and pray." And then somebody else calls, "Oh, I need you right now, and you need to do this." And the Lord just softly told him to stay and pray. Well, after he stayed and prayed a while, the guy calls up and says, "Oh, well, never mind on that. We got it fixed." Then the next person, "Oh, never mind. We got that fixed." And that leads us to our next principle. You notice that whenever Saul got into the right atmosphere, the donkeys that were lost had been found. So, if you get in the right spiritual atmospheres, it will cause an alignment of circumstances for you. And there's a lot of things, we're beating our brains in trying to get everything aligned in our life. And a lot of times, if we would just invest that time in the secret place, we would invest that time in the Word and invest that time in prayer. And I tell you, the prayer part, I've had a grace to study. I've said this before. It just seems like immediately after being born again, I had a grace to study. But also, I am learning the value of just taking time to worship and just taking time to seek His face and seek His time. And while you're doing that, every thought of everything that you need to do will come across your mind. And you have to be able to, and sometimes it takes the first long time of just praying in the Spirit to shut those thoughts down in order to even have productive time in the presence of the Lord. So getting in the right atmosphere will cause an alignment of circumstances. I've noticed if I will invest that time, and the devil's subtle. I mean, I'll be spending time in prayer, and the devil was saying, "Well, you need to get in the Word." Well, it ain't time to get in the Word. It's time to be in prayer. Now, thank God for the Word, and I believe in getting in the Word. But if it's not time, then it's time to get in His presence or just worship Him. And I've noticed, though, if I will put all those voices down and do all those things, when I do read the Word, it's more productive. Whenever I do work and whenever I do the things that I wasn't doing while I was spending that time, it will be more productive. It'll have His grace on it. And whenever it has His grace on it, you can accomplish way more. And you can get it done in 2 hours and have time for a nap even. Because you have invested that time and you've developed an atmosphere of His glory and turned aside to spend time in that presence. Well, conversely, the same principle is true. Wrong atmospheres can cause a misalignment in circumstances and cause problems. Well, when I was growing up, my dad had a friend that we would go visit, and it seems every time we went and visited that friend, things unraveled at both ends that night. When we'd come home that evening, and I mean, sometimes it was serious situations. I mean, accidents and things like that would happen. Well, why is that? Well, you need to kind of make a note of that. And I'm sad to say that guy's not even living anymore. So you have to gauge what atmosphere you're taking yourself into. And I was going with them. So what atmosphere you're taking your family into. And you also have to be led on who you help. We get the idea that we're just supposed to help everybody. No, you have to be led. And just a recurring theme in my life, ministry, and everything that I'm learning more and more every day is be led. And there's been people in the past, and you don't know what people are reaping for. You don't know what decisions they've made. They are reaping for some bad things they've sown. And when you try to get in the middle of it and help them, you're going to reap the same consequences they did. I mean, I can think of several people in the past, and especially people that will not appreciate it. They don't honor it. They're not thankful. If you help them move, they're mad because you didn't help them move 2 days, or if you help them with this, if you give them $10, they'll be mad that you didn't give them 20. I mean, it will never be enough. And I've noticed whenever I've tried to help these people, everything unravels at both ends. None of the plans work out. It will cost you more money, more time, more everything than any other endeavor that you try to do. And that's why you have to be led on these things, because you are going into certain atmospheres. Now we're going to fast forward in the life of Saul. And he has already been anointed king. He had been king a while. He had been rejected from being king. He was backslid and demonized and everything else through his spirit, David. Now he's pursuing David. And I considered reading the whole passage, but I will just give you the gist of it. He's fleeing from, David's fleeing from him, and he goes to Ramah, and Samuel was with him. And so Saul sent a detachment of messengers to take David, and whenever they came, they saw a group of prophets prophesying. It's very similar to the earlier account. And then the Spirit of God came on those messengers, and they also prophesied. So here they are trying to come capture David. The Spirit of God comes on them, and they begin to prophesy. So Saul sends other messengers, and they did the same thing. Then Saul did it a third time, and they also prophesied. Then Saul said, well, if you can't get people to do it right, I'll do it myself. So he went himself personally, and then the Spirit of God came on him, and then he prophesied and just fell out before the presence of God and prophesied all night before God. And what I want to show you from this, now see, earlier his heart was right. He was still humble and everything else. So the change was more permanent. But here, the change was temporary. So atmosphere changes your thinking. It's either temporarily or permanently, depending on how you yield to it. I heard Brother Keith Moore, once again, used to work for Brother Hagin's healing school. And he said people would come in, and they would be set under the Word, and they would hear the Word of God, and they would be healed. And you could see they were they were recovering and everything else, and then they would leave for the weekend, and then they'd come back looking like death eating a cracker. Well, why was that? It's because they went back to that old atmosphere. They went back to where they were comfortable with their friends and family, asking them, "Oh, I'll tell you, now how are you doing?" And don't. I don't want to hear that faith stuff. I want to know how you're really doing. And in that atmosphere of doubt and unbelief, they would relapse back into their sickness. So you have to develop a lifestyle of God's presence. Otherwise, the change will just be temporary. And discern your atmosphere. Make note of how did your thoughts change when you entered a place. And see, the better you know yourself, the better you can discern these atmospheres and be led in general. If I'm worshiping and praising God in my car, and I get out of my car and walk into a place and it gets heavy, then I know that's the atmosphere of that place, and that's not me. And I won't take ownership and say, "Well, I guess I'm just having another down day." No, you learn to discern your atmospheres. But the better you know yourself, the better you can discern atmospheres and be led in general.